the question we need to ask ourselves.
So are you saying we should be approaching personal finance more systematically, like we do with our healthcare?
Importance of establishing a clear financial plan that aligns with our values and goals.
So not just like a budget.
Not just a budget.
But like a roadmap.
Yeah, more like a roadmap.
That takes
fear or impulsivity.
Right.
Housel really argues that understanding our psychological relationship with money is just as important as understanding those basic financial principles.
So can you give us a concrete example of how our emotions can get in the way of making good financial decisions?
Sure.
All right, so let's dive into this idea of a janitor amassing a huge fortune.
Okay.
Right? You've got this janitor, Ronald Reed, living a super modest life.
Yeah.
And then you've got this Harvard-educated executive, Richard Fuscone, living in a mansion with 11 bathrooms and a see-through dance floor.
Oh my God.
And you'd think Fuscone would be the one, leaving millions to charity.
Right.
But it's actually the janitor.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to kind of dig into today with The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Yeah, that's a fascinating book, and it really gets into all these often overlooked factors that contribute to financial success.
Right. And these factors aren't always, what we expect.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about these contrasting stories. What exactly did Housel uncover with these two guys?
Well, so he tells these stories, right? Ronald Reed, our humble janitor, he amassed a fortune over his lifetime, just quietly investing and living, well below his means. And then you've got Richard Fuscone, who, despite all these impressive credentials, and this lavish lifestyle, he ended up declaring bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
After the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
So it's these contrasting stories. They really show us that there's more to financial success than just intelligence or a prestigious education.
Right. It's almost like you wouldn't want your average Joe performing heart surgery or designing a skyscraper.
Right.
We expect a certain level of expertise in those fields. But with money, it seems like the playing field is a bit more level.
Totally. And I think that's because finance, unlike, heart surgery, engineering, it's not purely a hard science.
Okay.
Sure, there are formulas and principles.
Right.
But it's also heavily influenced by human behavior, emotions and biases. So a brilliant mind doesn't necessarily equate to a brilliant investor.
Okay, so then what are these intangible qualities that Red seemed to have mastered? That Fuscone, maybe for all his education, lacked.
Yeah.
What are those things?
Well, Housel calls them the soft skills of money.
Right.
Things like patience, discipline, and emotional control.
So Reed really embodied those traits.
He did, yeah.
Okay.
He delayed gratification, lived frugally, and just consistently invested over decades.
Right.
Letting his wealth compound over time.
Whereas Fuscone was more about immediate gratification.
Yeah, he seemed to prioritize that.
Okay.
And status symbols, which, ultimately led to his financial downfall.
And, we've all heard the traditional financial advice.
Right.
Build an emergency fund, save a certain percentage of your income.
Yep.
That's all well and good. But what if you can't stick to those rules?
Exactly. That's the thing. What if you know the rules, but you're driven by fear or impulsivity?
Right.
Housel really argues that understanding our psychological relationship with money is just as important as understanding those basic financial principles.
So can you give us a concrete example of how our emotions can get in the way of making good financial decisions?
Sure. Think about what happens during a bear market, when stock prices plummet.
Yeah.
Our natural instinct a lot of times is to panic and sell everything and lock in those losses.
Yeah.
And this is a classic example of what psychologists call loss aversion. It's this tendency to feel the pain of a loss more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Interesting.
And that emotional response can really sabotage our long-term financial goals.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's almost like with health.
Right.
We go to the doctor, we get a diagnosis, we follow a treatment plan.
Right.
We treat it like a science.
Yeah.
But with money, it's often more about gut feelings.
Yeah.
Hear, say, whatever the latest financial guru is spouting.
Yeah, you've hit upon a key point. I think while medicine has really evolved over centuries, our approach to personal finance hasn't quite caught up. Housel argues that we lack that same collective learning in finance. We're bombarded with information, but are we truly getting better at managing our money?
Right.
That's the question we need to ask ourselves.
So are you saying we should be approaching personal finance more systematically,
Yeah.
like we do with our healthcare?
I think there's definitely a case to be made for that.
Okay.
Rather than just acquiring financial knowledge,
Yeah.
Housel suggests we need to understand our own behavioral patterns when it comes to money.
Okay.
Like what triggers us to spend impulsively?
Right.
What are our blind spots?
Yeah.
Once we understand those things, then we can start building better habits and making more rational decisions.
That makes sense. So it sounds like the first step is like becoming more self-aware,
Right.
really understanding our own financial psychology.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually like put that self-awareness into action?
Yeah.
What are some tangible steps we can take?
Well, Housel doesn't just, point out the problem. He offers solutions.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of like establishing a clear financial plan that aligns with our values and goals.
So not just like a budget,
Not just a budget.
but like a roadmap
Yeah, more like a roadmap.
that takes into account all these different factors,
Exactly.
like our risk tolerance, our time horizon,
Yeah.
our long-term aspirations.
It's like having a personal trainer for our finances.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone who can help us, identify our weaknesses, set realistic goals, and like hold us accountable.
I love that analogy. Yeah, and just like a good personal trainer, a solid financial plan shouldn't be one size fits all.
Right.
It needs to be tailored to our individual circumstances and, our psychological makeup.
Okay.
So for someone who's naturally risk averse, it might mean focusing on slow and steady investments like index funds. But for someone with a higher risk tolerance,
Yeah.
it might involve exploring more volatile assets.
Okay.
The key is to find an approach that feels comfortable and sustainable for you.
But even with like the perfect plan in place,
Right.
there's always that temptation to deviate, to chase those quick wins or get caught up in the latest investment craze.
Totally.
How do we resist those impulses and stay disciplined?
Yeah, this is where understanding our own psychology is so crucial.
Okay.
House talks about the power of pre-commitment, like setting up systems that automate our good financial habits.
Okay.
So, for example, setting up automatic contributions to our retirement accounts or investment portfolios.
Right.
That can really help us avoid making those impulsive decisions.
So it's like putting our finances on autopilot.
Exactly.
Removing the temptation to tinker or second guess ourselves.
And it removes the emotional component from those decisions.
Okay.
We're less likely to make impulsive choices when we've already committed to a plan.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense, but I'm curious, like we're talking a lot about avoiding mistakes, about minimizing losses.
Right.
What about maximizing our financial potential?
Yeah.
How does understanding our psychology help us make like smarter investments?
Well, Housel dives into this as well. He talks about how our perception of risk can really influence our investment decisions. So someone who's overly cautious might miss out on potentially lucrative opportunities.
Right.
Because they're too afraid of losing money.
Which is understandable.
Of course, yeah. Nobody enjoys losing money.
Yeah, but on the flip side,
Like,
someone who's overly confident might take on like excessive risk
Right.
and end up losing everything.
Exactly.
So how do we find that sweet spot,
Yeah.
that balance between caution and like calculated risk?
That's where self-awareness comes in again.
Okay.
Housel encourages us to honestly examine our own risk tolerance.
Okay.
Not just in theory, but in practice.
All
Like,
right.
how do we react when the market dips?
Right.
Do we panic and sell?
Yeah.
Or do we stay calm and ride it out? Understanding those emotional responses can help us make better decisions even when the stakes are high.
We often think of wealth as being a product of like financial wizardry, of mastering these complex formulas and algorithms. But it seems like we're saying that being good with money is actually more about mastering our own emotions,
Right.
our own psychology.
That's a really powerful insight, I think.
Yeah.
Housel makes a compelling case that successful investors often aren't the ones with the highest IQs.
Right.
Or the most sophisticated financial models.
Right.
They're the ones who have a deep understanding of their own psychology, their own strengths and weaknesses.
So it's less about being a financial genius and more about being, I don't know, an emotional ninja or something.
I love that analogy.
Right.
It's about having the discipline to stick to your plan, the patience to wait for the right opportunities,
Okay.
and the resilience to bounce back from setbacks.
So we've got patience, discipline, emotional control, understanding our risk tolerance. Are there any other tools we need in our financial ninja toolkit?
Yeah. Housel also emphasizes the importance of long-term thinking. He reminds us that building wealth is often a slow and steady process, not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right.
It's about consistently making good decisions over time,
Right.
not trying to time the market or chase the latest hot stock tip.
It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Yes.
Second best time is today.
Exactly. It's never too late to start making better financial decisions.
Right.
The key is to start now,
Wow.
to be consistent and to focus on the long game.
So patience, discipline, emotional control, long-term thinking.
Yep.
Anything else we need to add to our arsenal?
One more crucial element, contentment.
Contentment.
Yeah. Housel argues that one of the biggest obstacles to financial success
Okay.
is our constant desire for more. We always want a bigger house, a fancier car, the latest gadgets.
Right. The keeping up with the Joneses mentality.
Exactly, and that can keep us perpetually on the hedonic treadmill.
Yeah, I think we've all fallen victim to that at some point.
Yeah.
We compare ourselves to others.
Yeah.
Striving for some arbitrary level of material success.
Right.
But does more stuff really equal more happiness?
That's a profound question, and one that Housel tackles head on.
Yeah.
He suggests that true financial freedom comes from finding contentment with what we have, from appreciating the simple things, from focusing on experiences rather than possessions.
So it's about defining success on our own terms.
Exactly.
Not by society's standards.
Yeah.
So it's not just about how much money we have,
Right.
but how we feel about the money we have.
Precisely.
It's about aligning our financial goals with our values, our priorities, our definition of a fulfilling life.
I think this whole conversation is really making me rethink my entire approach to money.
Me too.
It's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's about understanding myself, my motivations, my weaknesses. It's about being intentional, being disciplined,
Right.
and most importantly, being content.
It's almost like money is this powerful tool
Yeah.
that we often misuse. We focus so much on the getting and the spending
Right.
that we neglect the being part.
The being part. Yeah.
The psychological and emotional aspects that really shape our relationship with money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really feels like we've been looking at money through like the wrong lens this whole time.
Yeah.
Instead of just like seeing it as a means to an end.
Right.
Maybe we should be focusing more on the journey itself, on how money can help us live like a more fulfilling life.
Yeah. I think that's really what Housel is advocating for. You know, he's challenging us to move beyond that traditional financial advice and really delve deeper into the psychology behind our money decisions.
So it's not about becoming a financial guru overnight.
Right.
It's about understanding ourselves,
Yeah.
understanding our biases and our triggers.
And then building a healthier and more sustainable relationship with money.
And who knows, maybe even ending up like Ronald Reed, leaving a legacy that goes far beyond just dollars and cents.
I mean, Ronald Reed's story is just a perfect illustration of this, you know?
Yeah.
He didn't have a fancy degree or a high-paying job.
Right.
But he understood those fundamental principles, you know?
Yeah.
Saving, investing, letting time work its magic.
Right.
He was content with his life. He didn't feel the need to, like, chase material possessions or keep up with anyone else.
Right.
And those simple principles combined with, you know, his patience and discipline ultimately led him to amass a pretty surprising fortune.
It's almost like he cracked the code.
Yeah.
Not of the stock market, but of like the human mind.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
he figured out how to align his behavior with his financial goals.
Yeah.
And the results speak for themselves.
They do.
But that alignment feels so elusive sometimes.
It does. It takes conscious effort
Right.
and a willingness to challenge our assumptions.
Okay.
You know, we need to be honest with ourselves about our spending habits, our emotional triggers. Yeah.
And the things that truly bring us joy and fulfillment.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's like the one key takeaway you hope our listener walks away with today?
That's a great question. I would say if I had to condense it into a single sentence, it would be this: your relationship with money is more about how you behave than what you know.
That's a good one.
So take some time to reflect on your own financial habits,
Okay.
your emotional triggers, and your biases.
Right.
Once you understand those things, you can start making more intentional choices
Yeah.
that lead to greater financial well-being and ultimately a more fulfilling life.
That's a fantastic point to end on, I think, and for our listener out there.
Yeah.
Here's something to think about.
Okay.
Now that you've had a glimpse into the psychology of money, what's one behavioral trait you want to work on to improve your own financial journey?
Yeah.
Maybe it's about cultivating more patience or discipline.
Oh.
Or maybe it's about like finding contentment with what you already have.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
just remember the power to change your financial future lies within you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of money.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those financial ninja skills sharp.
We like it.